Hello and welcome to AWN's weekly live coverage of the App State football press conference. I'm Jacob Pearsall.
And I'm Ella Snapp. It's our first live coverage of the season and we could not be more excited to talk App State football. The team started this season with a big win against UNC Charlotte under the big lights of Bank of America Stadium, showing promise for this new season under new leadership. Then, this Saturday was the Mountaineers' home opener back at the Rock versus Lindenwood. Most of us were at the game, including Jacob Pearsall, our very own, who was covering all the action. Let's take a look at how the game unfolded.
App State held their home opener on Saturday, and the Mountaineer faithful showed up in full force. After beating Charlotte just a week ago, the Mountaineers were heavy favorites at home, but the Lindenwood Tigers weren't going down without a fight. Although the Tigers played well, it was App State who were losing to themselves, thanks to drop passes and turnovers.
It's going to be the penalties, the turnovers, and the drops that negatively affect you. And there's things, when things go bad, it's how you respond. And we need to respond better.
The Mountaineers headed into the locker room up 14-6, but the team knew they had to respond stronger in the second half.
Like, we didn't go in there and give like a win one for the Gipper speed. It's about do your job and do it well and trust your training.
It was just we need to finish. You know, we're already up at that point. You know, we just need to win the next 30 minutes and handle business.
The Mountaineer defense showed up to play, holding the Lindenwood rushing attack to -1 yards, as well as tallying 8 sacks on the game.
You know, to hold them to negative rushing yards, that's a big deal. But it's just the little details of things. You know, not trying to do too much. You know, do what we're coached to do, and those things are going to handle itself, and we'll be a lot better.
Just when it looked like the Mountaineers secured the win, the Lions stormed back with a 24-yard touchdown pass, followed by an onside kick recovered by Lindenwood. Lindenwood had all the momentum and looked to score again, but Elijah McCantos had other plans.
We won. We're 2-0. We're happy about that, but we got a lot to clean up.
Today we have our analyst Trey Blake, who is not only a part of AWN, but is also a sports writer for the Appalachian. Trey, thank you so much for joining us today.
Ella, Jacob, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here today.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So Trey, a lot of buzz around social media now that we've had time to really digest this win. Do you think that social media buzz is warranted?
I think it's warranted and unwarranted at the same time, you know. Unwarranted in the fact that this is a brand new team. You know, we have a whole new coaching staff. We have a whole new offensive unit, minus some players here and there. But on the defense, not at all. You know, this defense came to play. 8 sacks, that's the most since '97. You know, Thomas Davis himself had 3 tackles for loss. Defense, 2 interceptions. You know, there were some miscues on offense, but that defense, man, they were ready. They came to play, and they were there on Saturday.
What do you think was most the powerhouse on the defense? Who do you think gave the most on the defense?
Well, it was Thomas Davis. You know, he's that senior leader on that defense. He walks out as a captain every Saturday for a reason. Again, 3 tackles for loss. And, you know, he went into the tent with an eye problem, you know, but that wasn't stopping him from coming back on that field. He came back out, led his team out there, and yeah, it was a close 20-13 win against an FCS opponent, but they got it done. The job was done.
And let's take a look a bit at the offense. Who would you say was really that X factor offensively to get App State the win?
Well, it was Rashad Dubinion, you know, 194 yards. He has 305 yards through 2 games. You know, also 2 costly fumbles in the red zone. You know, you look at Dalton Stroman as well, 3 receptions for 184 yards. But he also had that fumble out of the end zone. You know, 2 weeks straight with 2 fumbles out of the end zone. But that X factor, back to your point, Jacob, is Rashad Dubinion. You know, we all thought that A.J. Swan coming in, this is an SEC proven quarterback. You know, we're going to throw the ball around.
All right, and I hate to cut you off, Trey. We will be right back, but Coach Dell Loggins is here, so we are going to go over to that press conference now to see what he has to say.
Because it wasn't good enough in all 3 phases, and it can be better, and it needs to be better, and we need to coach better, and it starts with us as coaches. But first time since 2019 that we've been 2-0, and we don't take that. Winning is really hard regardless of the opponent, But you got to play to your standards. So with that, I'll open up to questions.
David Rogers, High Country Sports. Coach, with the 2 wins under your belt, what are your primary concerns going down to Hattiesburg?
Yeah, my main concerns right now are Mountaineers beating Mountaineers. Eliminate the things that hurt us. I'm going to talk offensively. It's the 4 turnovers, the 6 drops, the 5 penalties, 9 penalties as a team is all self-inflicted. And those are things that we're going to work. We're going to change the way we practice a little bit to put more of an emphasis on it to get this thing cleaned up with urgency.
David Ware, 24/7 Sports, kind of tagging on to that, Dal. As you went back and watched the film, did you see anything that made it apparent to you, hey, here's where some of these mental breakdowns are occurring?
No, they're not mental breakdowns. They are technique issues. They are how we respond issues. You go down, if we finish through the line and we score that touchdown, all of a sudden that game's 21-0. Part of this is a cultural issue that we're trying to clean up too, as far as like how you talk to yourself when things aren't going the way you want them to. You can't have a fumble and the next time we're going to throw the ball back to you soon, because you need to go to the next play, and you have to treat each play like it has a life and history of itself. And we fumble the ball, and the next time we go to that guy, we drop it. And then it's just fixing the mindset of, so what, now what? It happened. Like, learn from it, grow from it, go make the next play, put it behind you. And those are the things I think it's a cultural thing that we're still trying to fix. It's not necessarily, they're in the right spots, they're doing the right things. The technique, the drops, normally eyes. The penalties are, we had 3 illegal formations, which that can never happen. That's what, against Charlotte, we had aggressive penalties. We had offensively had too many of those, what we call dumb penalties, and that's what they are. So making sure that as coaches that we don't have too much volume, making sure that, and I went back, the first thing I did that night was I went back through every practice, and I probably slept for about 45 minutes that night. Just because you won the game, you're 2-0, but you're sick of your stomach about the way you played, the way it looked, because it could be so much better. Like, if you looked at the statistic line, you'd say they won 60-0 until you see those 4 turnovers, you see those penalties, and you see the drop balls that aren't on the stat sheet, but you feel them. So then it's like, okay, let's go back and watch a practice tape. Let's see where we need to improve. Did we do what we were coached to do? Did we put them in the situations that we need to put them in? Are we playing the right people? And you look at everything.
The last kickoff of the game was handled by Dom DeFreitas, and that came after Cash McVeigh got involved in a stop on the previous return. I assume those two things are related.
100%. Yeah. We jumped out of a gap on the long kickoff return. We had leverage on the ball, and we lost leverage, and they were able to spring an explosive return right there because we got out of our lane self-inflicted, and Cash got the guy down and banged up his shoulder, but he's okay. And then Dom came in and did a nice job.
Looking forward to Southern Miss. Blake Anderson calling the plays down there. Certainly we're familiar with him from his time in the Sun Belt. One staple of his offensive schemes has always been explosive plays. They've done it for the past decade, Arkansas State to Utah State. As you guys are looking at his system, what is it that makes that such a consistent, dangerous part of his offenses?
Yeah, I think he's a really good coach, and I think the way they play, they create space. And now you look at Southern Miss, and they create space with speed. And this will be the fastest team we've played to today. And so we'll do a little bit. We'll practice a little bit different. We'll do some good stuff to get the speed of the game, because we will feel a difference in speed from the last 2 opponents. They run well. And I think when you create that with space, you got to tackle well. You got to be good in space, which it's hard for defenders to tackle well. We don't get to tackle as much as we used to in football now, and it's a hard. You got good space athletes and guys like our alley defenders like McBurrows and McCantos, and those guys are gonna have to tackle well in space.
Bobby Phillips, Appalachian Weekly News on App TV. And, Coach, I just want to hear from you. Yes, there were some improvements you talk about that you need to make from last game. What were some positives, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that you want to take into Southern Miss this week?
Yeah, I think 2 weeks in a row our defensive line's dominated. And I think Coach Keith Jones has done a great job. You talk about sacks. And it's not always just sacks, because it's hits on the quarterback as well. It's pass disruptions. It's TFLs. And he's got that front playing really hard with Coach Shaq. And everything starts up front. When you can do that, because the message to the defense the same way when we watch the tape, like, fortunately for us, Lindenwood wasn't able to hurt us and expose us on a couple things because the D-line was causing havoc up front. But they will if we don't get things cleaned up, and we're gonna face a team this week that can expose us. And our defensive line's done a great job the last 2 weeks of not allowing. They cover up a lot of mistakes, and we've recruited really well at that position, to be completely honest, in the transfer portal and developing the guys that we had here currently. But then we have to continue to play well up front on both sides of the football.
And then looking on the other side of the field on football, looking at Rashad Dubinion's been very effective on offense for y'all so far. What about him do you like so far?
Yeah, well, he's a guy we recruited when I was at Arkansas, Cedar Grove kid, 194 yards rushing, but his contact balance is elite. His play strength is very good. He's a tough kid. Now, the things, it's like we praise him for all that stuff, but 2 fumbles in a game is too many. And he knows that. And it's about, we had a conversation on the sideline, and after he put the second one on the turf, and he's down on himself about it. And it's technique. We had to keep the ball high and tight. But when you're playing that hard and you're finished, it's easy to coach a guy and say, hey, look, here's what can't happen. You got to finish the game the right way, and you need to finish this game out. We played him too much. That starts with us. We need to rotate our backs better because we got quality backups, and he took dang near not about 90% of snaps, which is on us. We need to be better, and that starts with me. Because Trigg came in and played well. He had a great run. He got called back as a holding. A tight end had his hands outside. But we need to play him more. But really, really excited about Dub when we got here, and we were able to get him in the transfer portal. Like, it was a big get for us. He's going to be a good player. He can control the pace of the game, and he can control it with his toughness and the attitude he runs with.
Marvin Parker Jr., WLOS Asheville. I've got 2. The first one being, it can be a letter grade or in context, but 2 games in, how do you grade or assess Mountaineer football 2 weeks in at 2-0?
2-0. I mean, yeah, I look at it like the movie Gladiator. It's there, and we're 2-0. Is there a ton to fix? Yes. Do we have urgency to fix it? Yes. Does that mean that we're content because we're 2-0? No, it doesn't. We expected to be 2-0. We expect to play cleaner football than what we did as well. But we'll get that cleaned up. We'll get that fixed with urgency, but we're still 2-0.
And then now that this is you're traveling this week, does that change anything about the schedule, and how may that impact the mentality of coaching and maybe even playing? I don't know.
Yeah, we traveled to Charlotte as well. I mean, it wasn't that far, but we stayed in the hotel the night before the game. This will be the first time we have to get on a flight, which will be a little bit different for us, and it'll be the first time that we've done that as an organization. So there's a lot of detail that goes into that. You got a plane that's 177 holds 177 people, and we're gonna have 170 going. So we're gonna be packed in there like sardines, and some of these big boys are gonna have to get used to sitting right next to each other. And it's, can you take this on the road, which we have done, but can you take it on the road and travel? So everything gets moved up on a Friday because you got to get down there. You want to have dinner at the same time. So normally if you eat at 6:30, now you're eating at 5:30 because of time change. You're moving up curfew and those things. So the schedule's the same outside of you're getting on an airplane for the first time.
Matt President, App State Sports Network. Coach, you praised the defensive line and the work they've done so far this year. You guys are 6th nationally in rush defense, so not only getting after the quarterback, but also doing it in the run game. And the tackling, I think, has been really sound. What has impressed you most about the way that you've kept plays in front of you defensively?
Yeah, I mean, we've done our job to this point. We're about to start getting tested a lot more. The challenges are going to continue to get bigger and bigger, so we don't need to worry about stats right now, patting ourselves on the back, because we have beat 2 teams they're 0-2 at this point right now. So the challenge of the schedule is about to be this week versus a team that can't expose us if we don't play the way we want to play and to our standard. And it starts with practice today. And if we don't have the best practice of the year today, then you're going to see a decline in that. So we're not worried about statistics. We're talking about playing our style of football, every play, every snap. And we don't talk about the statistics here. We talk about doing your job well. And to this point, they've done what they needed to do, but the challenge is about to escalate.
Southern Miss quarterback Braylon Braxton is a dual threat guy. You talk about needing to elevate the play moving forward and that you'll face new challenges. What does he present, and what must you do to contain him?
Yeah, he's an athletic guy. We recruited his brother, a Tulsa kid. We signed his brother when I was at Arkansas, so know the family, know him well. And we're going to have to keep him in the pocket. We can't let him beat you. He is a true dual threat. He can beat you from the pocket, and he can beat you with his legs. You can't he can't be both. You got to take away one phase, and you got to take away his legs, and you got to make him sit there and beat you in the pocket, and that's where you need your defensive line to play big in a game like this.
Anybody else? Thank you, Coach.
Appreciate you guys.
Yep. Everyone have a great day.
Welcome back to Appalachian Weekly News. Some interesting words from head coach Dowell Loggins. But Trey, I just want to ask some questions here. First off, you talked about the turnovers from this App State team. How do they eliminate that going forward?
Well, in the press conference on Saturday after the game, it was all about technique, just like Loggins just said. It's about focus. It's about head in the game. Those illegal formation, like 3 illegal formation penalties. I mean, this is an FBS football team. You can't be having that against Lindenwood. You can't be having that against Charlotte. You definitely can't be having it against USM.
So, going off of that, he was talking about the culture that he's building going into this Southern Miss game. What do you think, if ideally it went perfectly, what do you think a coach would want to see from that culture on the field from the team?
I would think he just wants them to be together. Play together, go out there together, be brothers. We heard that in the introductory press conference when he came in the spring. We heard that in the preseason press conference. We heard that last week after Charlotte as well. This team needs to be together. They need to stay together, and they need to keep their head in the game. A little bit on the offense, it looked like they were a little down on themselves after AJ Swan threw that interception. And you can't have that, especially not from a senior quarterback.
Dowell Loggins mentioned toughness from this App State team. How do they regain that toughness maybe after stumbling their way a little bit in that first game and the second game as well?
Confidence. It stays with confidence. It stays with knowing that, that offensive line, we were talking about the offense. That offensive line allowed Dubinion to put 194 yards up. That's a hard runner. And, Loggins also mentioned that they have good backs behind him. Jakari Lewis. We haven't seen a lot of Kamani Alexander either this year. We've seen him a little on kickoff returns, but, Jakari Lewis came in for one play. It really starts on the offensive line, and we've seen that.
But, building off of that, that mindset, that confidence. Coach talked about how they need that confidence, and they're working on building that mindset. Like you said, the offense was down on themselves after it's definitely slowed down. I think people noticed that. So how do you think that mindset is going to be able to be changed and rebuilt going into this next game?
I said earlier, Swan is an SEC quarterback, came from Vandy, came from LSU. He's been in this position before. He's faced, he's been in rooms with, 5-star quarterbacks. I think he is ready. I think he just needs to, go back and find his receivers more. Only 2 receivers had more than 5 targets in Stroman and Barnes. And he's really found Barnes a lot. 11 targets this past game, 8 targets against Charlotte. He needs to spread the ball out more. Kanan Hamlet at tight end. William Fowles even on that outside slot route. He needs to find more receivers, and he needs to build confidence in himself first, like what you were talking about.
Well, we'd love to keep chatting here, but let's send it down to Bobby Phillips at the live press conference. What do you got for us, Bobby?
Thanks, guys. I thought this press conference was very interesting into looking at the mindset of Dowell Loggins and this coaching staff. One thing that he really emphasized was cleaning up the mistakes from the Lindenwood game that we saw on Saturday, but emphasized that he can improve them going forward. Obviously, the turnovers were a big thing that he touched on, as well as some other penalties, especially those with the illegal formations. He seemed very optimistic about being able to clean these up, as he quote said, silly mistakes in the press conference was a big part of it, but he said that he was very confident that they can improve that going into the future. What I found really interesting from this press conference and a question talking about Rashad Dubinion, he talked about the amount of snaps he was getting. Yes, he was a very effective running back, but he talked about the 2 fumbles that he's had so far, and he said, hey, that's on me. And I thought that was really interesting to see from a head coach coming from that perspective, and it's really great seeing that mindset going forward. We'll see how the Mountaineers do against Southern Miss this Saturday.
Welcome back to the studio, and some great words from Bobby. Now, Trey, I would love to hear your thoughts on those fumbles. They mentioned Rashad Dubinion, maybe had some turnovers. What do they do to clean that up going forward?
Dubinion's just got to. I mean, it's simple. He's got to hold the ball. He's got to hold on the ball. These are red zone possessions of, put in score position. This game could have been 42-13. He's got to hold on to this ball. And I think Loggins mentioned he knows that. He's ready. He's a senior as well. He's been at Arkansas. We keep talking about these SEC senior guys. They played in the hardest league in the country. They're experienced. They're ready. And this is a slip-up game. It's a trap game. And you're moving into conference play. And that Southern Miss team that they're going to on Saturday, it's that Marshall team that just whooped up Louisiana in the Sun Belt Championship last year. I really think they're going to be ready, and I really think they're going to put some people on notice this coming Saturday.
Absolute domination as the Watauga
team catching attention from the high country. Let's take a look at Watauga High School football. The Pioneers beat Mount Airy Granite Bears last Friday, conquering in a 61-7 game. Our Bobby Phillips is a busy reporter. He talked to the head coach Ryan Hobbick about the performance.
absolute domination as the Watauga Pioneers triumph over the Mount Airy Bears 61-7. Coach Hobbick, what does it mean to get such a big win outside of conference play?
It was a big win. We knew when we scheduled this game, Mount Airy is obviously a perennial powerhouse, won 2 state championships in the last 3 years. So we knew it would be a good game. We knew they had some good players. I know they were missing their tailback tonight, but I'm really pleased the way our kids came out in all 3 phases, played complementary football, from special teams, offense, and defense. Our defense ran to the ball. We created turnovers. Anytime that you can get 6 turnovers like that, and then we didn't have any turns on offense, but we scored right after they turned the ball over. We scored right away, so that really took the wind out of them. So it was a big-time win for us. It was a statement win for us, but it's one of the things that we got to keep building on. We have a bye week next week, and then we go on the road to play 2 very difficult teams with Irwin and Asheville. But we're really pleased with tonight's win against a very good football team.
And you talk about the turnovers during this game, as you mentioned, 6, 4 of which being fumbles. How do you bring that defensive ferocity into each game?
Well, our defensive coaches, our head of the defense, head coach is Coach Curley, our defense coordinator, Coach Hicks, and Coach Phelps and Coach Carr. They do a great job with the defense, and we practice it. Our defensive staff does a great job in practice of being intentional, of stripping that ball and trying to get that ball out. So when you create turnovers like that, especially when early on when they're moving the football and our defense found a way to get the ball back, that was huge. But our defensive coaches and our kids do a great job with the turnovers.
And then looking at the other side of the ball, Cade Keller, your quarterback, very mobile from that position. What does that bring to your offense?
Well, he's a dual threat guy, as you saw tonight. He can throw the football extremely well, but he's also got some wheels on. He can run the ball. He makes great decisions, and it just allows our offense to do multiple things, from throwing the football, running the ball, get the ball out the perimeter. So he's doing a really good job of being a first-year starter in our offense, and of course replacing Maddox Green. But Cade's doing something that's really good for him. Is he's throwing the ball a little bit more than we have in the past, but we have some guys that are catching the ball and creating separation and making plays for him on the perimeter.
Pioneers move up to 3-0 on the season and face Irwin in 2 weeks.
Bobby Phillips isn't our only busy reporter. Jacob, you were actually there calling the game for WATA. What did you see from that Watauga High School football game?
Well, the Pioneers look amazing. There's no other way to put it. 3-0 start to the season. They had a really good game against TC Robertson earlier in the season, who they only won by 14-0. Earlier in last year. So this Watauga team is growing. They're getting better every year, and new quarterback Cade Keller is a big reason why. He's been absolutely magnificent for this team, and there's so many players for him to go to as well. It's not just him. There's a full cast of Watauga Pioneers.
Tell me about Evan Burrows. Tell me about the connection and the relationship that those two have on the field.
Yeah, you can tell they're friends off the field and on the field. They have a phenomenal chemistry. Evan Burrows can work in the backfield. He can work out at receiver. He can work in the screen game as well. There's just so many avenues for this Watauga team to use, but it's not just him. You see guys like Matthew Leon step up as well. There's so many pieces to this Watauga team, and we haven't even talked about the defense that only allowed 7 points from a very strong Mount Airy team. Despite the fact they didn't have their starting running back, it was still a very strong team. So Watauga, very strong start to the year, and in 2 weeks, they'll have a big game ahead of them in Irwin.
Absolutely. We're going to go back to App State football and keep talking about their amazing defense. Trey, let's talk a little bit more. You were talking about Dubinion. Yes, he was really down on himself, and there were definitely a couple of fumbles that shouldn't have happened, and he took ownership of that. But, I mean, we can talk about the 194 yards he did get on those runs, 7.8 average yards a run. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, and, this goes back to Charlotte, too. He's been doing this both games. I mean, you talk about Dubinion, this really starts with the offensive line. I mean, it starts at left tackle, left guard. The offensive line, they're leaders. They come out and they're ready. They're leaders on this field. They're leaders in the locker room. And we asked in the post-game press conference, one of the offensive linemen, how can you keep Dubinion's head up? And he's like, we just got to lean on him. We got to lean on him. He's ready to do this. Like what I said earlier, he's played in hard leagues. He's played in hard games. And this Southern Miss game is easily the hardest game of the season.
Well, you talk about Southern Miss. What does App State have to do to not only prepare for Southern Miss to try and go 3-0, but also looking forward on the rest of the season?
Well, it's what Coach Loggins said. They have a dual threat quarterback that can beat you through the air, beat you with his legs. They have to contain him. And I mean, they showed that this past Saturday, -1 rushing yards for Lindenwood. I think we're going to see some similar sets that we saw from DJ Smith this upcoming Saturday. We saw a bit of a 4-3 start to the game, and then it kind of moved into a 4-2-5 in the third quarter. But I think that 4-3 is really what's going to keep the peace for the Southern Miss quarterback.
So looking even further than that, there's this huge Boise State away road game. How are they going to prepare for that?
That's an odd one. It's an up and down team. This is a team that went to the playoff last year. This is a team that started 25 in the first preseason poll, but then went to South Florida and got smacked around. I mean, point blank period. So I think a lot is going to tell about both Boise State and App State this upcoming Saturday. But I think what we should really look for is App State's defense. I mean, we keep talking about it, but I think that front line is going to come for Boise State, and they're going to come hard.
Of course, after Boise, they come back home against Oregon State, and then we really get into that conference play. Georgia State, some big names that, the Mountaineers have fought in the past, some very good games, some classics here at the Rock, but also away at the opposing stadiums. So which of those matchups is speaking the most to you? Which is going to be the big game for App State to really win?
Well, I mean, it's obviously Oregon State. I mean, we got two, eventual Pac-12 teams coming in back-to-back weeks. That Oregon State, you got a guy, Malik Murphy, who was at Duke last year, and then he was at Texas before that. This is important for recruiting. This is important for confidence. I mean, we keep talking about confidence. We keep talking about cultural things. It starts on the field with performance, with results. And there's been questions of the secondary in years past. I think the secondary is ready for quarterbacks, like Malik Murphy, like Maddox Madsen at Boise State, these strong quarterbacks who, can zip that ball 75 yards down the field like nothing. I mean, we saw that in the Lindenwood game, a crazy Hail Mary. That's going to be the regular. Those 2 straight weeks in Boise and then back here for Oregon State. The defensive backs and the defensive line, they're going to be ready. I mean, this is just an absolutely phenomenally improved App State defense.
So Georgia State, Coastal Carolina, which one are we looking forward to? Which one will be harder?
Ella, I feel like we have this story every year. We're supposed to be so good, and then we lose to a Georgia State. We lose to a Coastal Carolina, and I don't know. We have, transfer quarterbacks. We keep talking about these super good quarterbacks. The Sun Belt is getting these good quarterbacks, and everything. MJ Morris came from Maryland and NC State. Coastal, I feel like, has to be the one. It's a Thursday night game here in Boone. Last time around, two years ago, Coastal beat App State for the first time in Boone. So they got to repay that. They got to start to go. They got to go.
Well, thank you so much for coming today. Thank you, Trey, and we will see you all next week on our football press conference roundup.